Adam and I have been debating the uses of Blue Lotus essential oil, and he'd said to me, spiritual protection. Now, that's not one that would have come high on my list, so I'm excited to hear his reasons why he would use Blue Lotus for spiritual protection. Take it away, Ad.
Yeah, well, what I found really interesting about Blue Lotus is when I was kind of diving into its background and its mythology and how it's weaved its way into mythology, not only in ancient Egypt, and we've explored that in our last video, but also you find it in Chinese mythology, Indian and Hindu mythology, a bit of Japanese, Greek, Roman. It's so everywhere. And whereas we often refer to Rose as being the queen of the flowers, I would regard Blue Lotus to be the high priestess of the flowers. So when we work with this, it helps to lift our vibration. And a lot of the time when we're kind of dealing with doom or gloom or there's some negative energies, they're a low vibration energy. And so what we want to do is we want to raise our vibration above that. If we're busy scratching around with the chickens, then we're not floating up with the gods and the goddesses and the eagles. And so when we decide to work with Blue Lotus, I find that it actually helps us to kind of not kind of dwell in those kind of negative spaces in that way. So I use it really powerfully, and I've used it in many different occasions to help me just kind of glide through difficult situations, not ignorantly, but just choosing not to engage in things that will drag you down. It's so easy sometimes that someone infuriates you and you want to get pulled into that, or I remember hearing this beautiful speaker refer to this idea of the main thing that you should protect in your life is your peace. And you can let other things be compromised, but don't let anyone take your peace away from you. And I think Blue Lotus, with its such subtle but magical aroma, is really powerful for that. Now, how would we use it for that? Well, I love to use it as an anointing oil, and I would anoint it on places like along the wrists, over the chest. I think it's really nice to actually start it at the third eye and bring it over to the crown. But as you do that and you kind of bring its energy around, you could also pop a few drops in a mist and spritz it around you and use that for the week. But I also like to visualize a cobalt blue cape. And, there's lots of different things we might visualize for protection. Some people visualize white light. Some people will visualize things like spiders' webs. There's so many different things you can use for protection. But this having this violet cape on you or this cobalt blue cape is a really nice way for you to kind of pair the power of Blue Lotus with that visualization. And if you've got something coming ahead of you where you're like, I need to rise above it and not allow it to interfere my peace, then it can be really beautiful in that way.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I wouldn't necessarily have called that spiritual protection in my vocabulary, but I think that you are right that it is spiritual protection. I'd have more gone for things like ones that protect the aura, and I don't necessarily think that it does that. But I think that in terms of, I think you're absolutely right to protect your peace, protect your vibration, protect your own mission. I think it's a splendid recommendation. It does have a really high vibration, doesn't it? Definitely. You can feel that it kind of lifts you out of your body. Not as much as maybe I would say Monada does that. You feel like you're being lifted by butterfly wings on with Monada, but you definitely feel it coming the opposite, I think, if you like, to the feeling that you get with patchouli. Patchouli brings you down into your body. When somebody's got anxiety and stuff, it's got that really grounding nature. This has a real elevating nature, and it's heady and it's funny and it's light and it's like my mum would say convivial. That's one of her favourite words. Very convivial, like that you have a very light, delicate party and everybody's chatting and everybody's getting on very well and it's all very civilized. I just sound like my mother now, all very civilized. But it does have that nature to it, that it's just like life is just not necessarily what you see on the TV, and that protection is, I think, really valid. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is when we look at the flower at its peak, it's rising above the water. And of course, the watery realm is connected to the emotions. Now, one of the biggest things that will interfere or interrupt our inner peace is the emotions of others. And I've found Blue Lotus to be really, really great for helping you to not get drawn into other people's emotional turmoil, emotional blackmail, any kind of emotionality, and just, again, staying like this regal high priestess and not getting drawn into it as well. It can also be really good when people get really fired up and have opinions about what you're doing with your life. And I think Blue Lotus is a really beautiful one that helps you stay aligned with what you're here to do, what your mission is. And our path may be different to someone else's, whether it be a friend, a partner, a parent, or just some random who's got an opinion on what you should be doing with your life. I think this is also another one to help you kind of navigate that, because you're never going to please everyone. There's going to be people that are wrapped with what you're doing and people that aren't. And if you try and please the people that aren't, you're going to displease the people that were already happy with it. So I think this is also a really nice one for whether people are throwing their emotions at you or you're in a highly emotional place. I think it can be a nice one. I don't know if it would be one of my favorite grief oils. I think there are so many other great grief oils. But if sometimes you just need to kind of take a breath from the emotion, then I think Blue Lotus is really great for helping you rise above the stormy waters of the emotional realm when needed.
Yeah, and I think that, if you kind of think about the stories and of the Blue Lotus and what's happening to it in nature, it can't flourish in pollution. It has to have clean, fresh water. And I think that situation, your energetic field is becoming polluted by stuff that's going on around, then that purifying nature of it, as you say, of like, it always reminds me of a really clear chime of a bell, like a crystal bell that's absolutely sounding the right frequency to me. I feel like I'm in the right place again. It really does take it up to that, I think.
And to be frank, take us out of the spirituality. Our body, we can't survive in toxic environments. So each day we have to make choices that are going to be the for our better well-being, not only spiritually, but emotionally, mentally, and physically. And I think Blue Lotus is a really good one to just go, no, I'm making a conscious choice to guard myself from things, toxic influences on all different levels, so that I can be at a higher vibration and I can connect to my spirituality. And of course, one of the beautiful things about Blue Lotus is that it has such a rich spirituality to it. In our next video, we're going to explore especially Kemetic spirituality or ancient Egyptian spirituality. So make sure you check that one out if that really drives you or calls to you as well. But this is such an amazing essential oil. So if you feel it's time for you to rise above the emotional junk, the emotional waters, and have that sense of protection and awaken that inner priestess within you, then I think this is a really great essential oil to work with. So make sure you check out our next video. We'll be back very soon to explore other, I guess, aspects of Blue Lotus as well, because there's so much to talk about it, and you've done a deep dive in your course as well. But we'll be back very soon and dive into more. Until then, take care and blessed be.
Bye-bye.